Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. On today's show, we'll have Lance Kelsey talking about firearm safety and Rita Field, the Executive Director from the Saskatoon Crisis Intervention Center. As always, we'd like to connect with you.
Tweet us at connect_YXZ. Follow us on Facebook to watch new and past interviews, or email connectyxz@gmail.com with any future guest or topic suggestions.
Firearm safety in Saskatchewan has been a long-standing tradition for many people. I've invited Lance Kelsey with the Firearm Safety Program to come and give us some background information about what's happening in the province and some updates. And Lance, thank you first of all for making some time for us today.
Oh, thanks for calling me out.
I want to ask you a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with firearms in the first place, and then how you ended up teaching the program.
Well, I think a lot of it was growing up in a small farm in Saskatchewan. Firearms were always there. Back then, at 12 years old, there was no issue really to take a gun out on the farm and go shoot gophers or whatnot. So I got into the hunting and everything, and then at one point, I was a member of a gun club in our small town. We needed some instructors, so myself and one other member of the club took our training to become hunter education and firearm safety instructors.
And there's a difference between hunter safety and firearm safety?
Yes, yeah. Every province has its own hunter education program. So from Ontario, Alberta, Quebec, they are recognized. Saskatchewan recognizes at least 21 different countries' hunter education programs. So if you just want to hunt with archery or a crossbow in Saskatchewan, you only need to have your hunter education. Anytime that you want to use a firearm with that, if you want to hunt by yourself, you need to have your firearm safety as well, and that's a federal program.
So if I am a landowner and just want to fire a firearm or bow, is that something I can do on my own, or do I need any more training or a license for that?
Well, if it's a bow and you're not actually hunting, with that there's no legal requirement. But if you are going to own a firearm or possess a firearm, you will have to take the course.
So in order for me, just to clarify, because there's a bit of a generational shift between urban and rural areas, and I think the perception is that it's so easy to acquire a long arm rifle or a handgun. What is required, first of all, for me to own a firearm?
Well, the legal process, if you want to have a own, borrow, or use a firearm, you have to have the firearm safety course. So you have to take a minimum 8-hour course for long guns, which is your rifles and shotguns, any sporting firearms that you'd use for hunting. And if you want to go a little bit farther and get your restricted, which is your handgun, or if you're familiar with the AR-15 type platform rifle, that you need to take a secondary course, which is a Canadian restricted firearm safety course, which is, depending on the time from when you took the firearm safety course to the restricted, it's either going to be a minimum of 4 hours or a minimum of 6 hours for that course.
So to get access to these, how do we dispel those myths that are out there that it's so easy to do that? And I raise up the criminal element that seems to be able to have access to them, and how they get them, I'll leave that there. But about the safety aspect of it, for someone who wants to own a rifle and just simply shoot for the sport of it, they would need the PAL, the Purchase and Acquisition License, along with the training then.
Yeah, you cannot purchase a firearm, be in possession of a firearm, or purchase ammunition without a valid PAL, which is a Purchase Acquisition License, so or Possession Acquisition. So you need that if you want to go into a gun store and you see a rifle you want. If they were to come into our store and they said they'd like to look at a rifle, we have to ask for their valid PO or PAL. If they don't have one, we generally don't want to give them one, because you don't have it, you can't be in possession of that. Now, some gun stores might be a little more relaxed and say, all right, you're under my supervision, I'll do that. But for the most part, it's like, no, if you don't have it, we're not going to hand it to you. Same thing with restricted. If you don't have that restricted status on that card, because depending on what you do, if you just have your Canadian firearm safety course, that allows you to be in possession and for rifles and shotguns, sporting firearms. if you take the restricted, they give another designation on the back of the card that allows you to have restricted, which is handguns. So then if you come in and want to look at a handgun, we're going to want to see that restricted status, or else normally we won't give it to you. If you come in to buy ammunition, if you do not have a valid PAL, we are not going to sell you ammunition. Now, for criminals, it doesn't matter. There is no law that they follow anyway. But for you and I, we have to actually follow some pretty strict regulations before we can possess or buy firearms and ammunition.
So I walk into Back 40 Guns and Gear and I say I'd like to look at a rifle, and you would say to me, do you have your PAL?
Absolutely.
If I don't, then I would need to take the course, get the PAL in order to look at and acquire one of these.
Yeah, and the course is a hands-on. All the firearms that I use for my course, they have all been deactivated. There's no live ammunition, but they function just like a regular firearm because you need to get familiar with those firearms before we'd want anybody to handle a firearm.
So what about, I'll go into handguns, I guess. If I did purchase one, can I take that hunting?
Absolutely not. Not in Saskatchewan. We do not have any hunting rights for a handgun here. Down in the States, I mean, you always hear about people hunting with a handgun. Here, no, we cannot. Some provinces, I don't know, Alberta, BC, we're doing it, where if you were archery hunting, you could get a permit after you did, some training and whatnot, to take a handgun out for protection. Because if you're out in the woods and you're running into a bear or a grizzly bear or whatnot, and you only have a bow, well, you are going to be pretty underprotected, I guess. So for that, they were giving those out. I can't guarantee if that's still available. Even Saskatchewan at one time, we did have where you could get a carry permit if you were a surveyor, geologist, prospector, anything where you had to work with your hands. But then again, regulations change continuously, provincially and federally. So even right now, as I say that, I couldn't guarantee that that would be the case today.
So if I did have a restricted PAL and I owned a handgun, I'm not able to fire it anywhere else other than
a certified range.
So can I go driving around with this handgun on my dash of my car, or does it need to be secured? Or
oh no, absolutely not. Whether it's a long gun or a handgun, we have storage, transportation, and display laws. So for transportation, if I want to have a handgun in my vehicle, and I'm going, say, from my residence to my range, it has to be trigger locked or cable locked, which makes the firearm unable to fire, in a locked case. And I have to make sure that I have all the correct paperwork. So I will need my valid PAL, I will need an authorization to transport, and I will need the registrations, which means every restricted firearm, like a handgun, has a piece of paper that the government issues the owner that has a series of numbers and identification on it, and it is strictly for that one firearm that you are transporting. So that has to all be in there, and the firearm has to be locked in that case. And when you're in a vehicle, it can be beside you, say if you're going to the range. But say if you have to get out of your vehicle for any reason, like get gas or get some food, the firearm has to be hidden, so it cannot be visible. And the same thing with non-restricted. You cannot leave a firearm sitting there so somebody walking by can actually identify it.
I'm getting the message that it's not just a willy-nilly type of ownership thing, that it's no different than, I guess, pills or alcohol. They all have their intended use, and if it's misused, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. We have some pretty strict rules on storage and transportation. So you cannot, at home, just leave your firearm sitting in the corner of your house. It has to have some type of locking device on it. So rifles and shotguns, the minimum requirement, not counting your house, because your house has to be locked, would have to have a trigger lock or a cable lock on it, or you have to remove the boltable carrier. So you have to make it so it cannot be fired. And if it is like that, you cannot have your ammunition with it. Now, the best way to do it is to trigger lock or cable lock it and lock it in a safe or a room or even a case that you lock as well. So you try to make as many steps. I guess what I'm trying to say is you try to make it as hard as possible for someone who has ill intent, who's breaking into your house to steal that firearm. So the more steps or more barriers you put in front, the better it is for you.
You mentioned you were 12 or so on the farm. Is there an age limit that someone can sign up to take the course here?
Yeah, in Canada, you have to be 12 years old to take your Canadian Firearm Safety course. Now, they cannot get a PAL or apply for a PAL until they're 18. And if you want the restricted, you have to be 18 before you can take the restricted course. Now, people can take the course under 12 years old, but they're not allowed to write the exam. So it would just be for educational purposes. So quite often I teach with children, 12 and over, a combination hunter education and firearm safety course at the same time. And that way the kids get all of it. They have the paperwork, so when they turn 18, they can apply for a PAL. But if they are 12 years old and say they're in a sport like biathlon where they have to cross-country ski and carry a firearm, they can apply. Or if you just want to be able to allow your children to go out hunting, they can apply for what's called a miner's permit from 12 to 17 usually. And that is very much like a PAL, except for a miner's. They cannot buy firearms and they cannot buy ammunition, but they can be in possession of a firearm, sort of away from supervision.
We sometimes hear about ladies or women that want to take the course. Do you have a fair bit of uptake from females that want to learn about firearms safety?
Absolutely. I probably, on average, my courses, because we are limited on how many students we can have at one time, I usually have probably 25 to 30% women come through. And probably a large portion of those take the restricted as well. So there are a lot of women shooters in this province, in this country.
What would people need to do if they were interested in signing up for that? Where would they go, or what could they call you?
They could call most gun stores. We'll have some type of contact to get them with that. Of course, now we have Facebook. I mean, Facebook's actually quite old now, but there's lots of places on there where people post their ads. If you were to get a hold of Safe in Regina, which is Saskatchewan Association of Firearm Educators, they have lists of quite a few instructors. And many of the instructors that teach the hunter education also teach the firearm safety. So usually you can find it through there.
I want to thank you for that, Lance. It's not as easy as I thought it was, and I'm glad we dispelled a few of those myths. And thank you and Paul for your work that you're doing at Back 40 Guns and Gear, and I hope we'll see you again.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.